Hello, this is Sarah from Reset Revolution. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will be having Isabella Santacruz, a Franco-Finnish student in Argentina, to discuss the topic of self-talk, and she will guide us through ways we can mould our self-talk. So I think Isabella will be joining shortly. Again, important topic for people struggling with mental health or people who just want to know more about it. And perfect. Hello, Isabella.
Hi.
Could you start off by introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Isabella. I am a French and Finnish student, currently in Argentina, studying in my last year of high school. And yeah, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Isabella. And to already get started with our interview, could you firstly start off by perhaps defining self-talk for those who may not know?
Yeah, of course. Self-talk essentially is your internal monologue. And so it is influenced by really your subconscious and your subconscious thoughts, beliefs, values in a way. And it can be positive, it can be also negative. And oftentimes I find more commonly self-talk is very often about yourself and very introspected.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Could you tell us how you started your journey with self-talk?
Yeah, quite frankly, started pretty negatively. I have to say, I can remember from the age of about 5, 6, 7 years old, being very, very negative about speaking up, especially in class. I remember thinking my answers or my contribution would be too stupid for others to hear, and that it wasn't worth it for me to even speak up. And I'd let others do that for me. And that's kind of the first memories I have of myself having that type of negative self-talk. Um, Later on, it came into issues of body image, thinking I was too ugly, too fat, not thin enough for even to be friends with certain classmates or to do certain activities. It was something that restrained me from doing things. And I mean, later on in education, it was often about things that I would never be able to do. Like that was kind of the
Mm-hmm.
speech I had towards myself was very negative and about not being able to do something
Mm-hmm.
instead of finding a solution or looking forward to something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I've heard from like we've had a self-love coach, Vanessa, come interview with us, and she talked about how it's so important to kind of be conscious about how you talk to yourself, your like internal monologue, how you treat yourself. And just hearing that your journey started off negatively, I think it's it would be quite relatable for many people. Then
Totally.
could you kind of tell us how you were able to mold it and perhaps positively shift it?
Yeah. I really started to realize I had a very negative approach
Mm-hmm.
to self-talk about 6 or 7 months ago. I That was a time I went through a lower time mentally.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with the help of my parents, I seeked for professional help. So I went to a therapist, and she then kind of enlightened me of how I was creating these kind of negative pathways in my brain when I kept having negative self-talk. And so it was automatic for me to think negatively of a situation because it was just the habit. So if you think of it as kind of like a dirt road, if more and more of those thoughts walk on one same path, which is the negative path, the thoughts that will come along after that will go with that same path. So after realizing that, I started to take her advice with more positive thoughts, positive habits. And so that started with, for example, and it seems very awkward and cliche, but I started to write down positive things and things I liked about myself. And just like a list to have and to be reminded of if I ever did take those negative roads in my brain. And so those were some of the techniques that I started to use. And generally, I started to take a step back on situations that I deemed I couldn't control, because there are a lot of those happening every day for us. And we have to take a step back and think, what can I control in this situation? And ultimately, that is the way you think of that situation. So that helped tremendously. And it is still something that I'm working on. It's a very long road, and it's an ongoing process. But I have made progress, which I'm very happy about.
Yeah, no, mental health is it's a topic that, I mean, perhaps us like living in this modern world where people expect you to, be successful and all these things, and then that people's definitions of like success are when you get like the results quickly and all that. But then in reality, I think I personally felt like the COVID-19 outbreak kind of allowed me to realize that success always doesn't come in like a default form, and like these things about mental health, they take time, and they're things that you have to take time in. And it, like, how like when people get wounded at a young age, and then when they become older, like sometimes that exact place like still aches sometimes, but then you kind of you try to handle it slowly. And I think it's something that people should keep in mind with mental health as well. So I think that tip is something that people could definitely apply to their own daily lives. And what would you say is the importance of self-talk, especially for us adolescents?
I would say ultimately self-talk is the very beginning of how you will treat yourself and your environment. How you will see your worth. And for anyone, it can be a beginning. If it is a negative self-talk, it can be a beginning of more serious mental issues. It is known that, for example, this is a form of negative self-talk, but it's called rumination. And so this kind of snowball effect, negative self-talk, that is known to cause anxiety and potentially depression. And so I think it's very important for adolescents, especially because we're constantly discovering, developing, questioning everything around us at this age, which is teenage years.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are in a very positive place, and
Mm-hmm.
in our thoughts, we can allow ourselves
Mm-hmm.
to question more, to want to discover more, and to ultimately be able to look forward to the future, which isn't easy to do when everything is negative in your head. And so I think, as I said, we can't control everything that happens, but we can control how we react to it. And so if we make that a statement in our lives from our adolescent years, we can make a major impact on the rest of our lives and our stance in our everyday life, from then on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a really great point. And that was I just kind of thought of a question right now, like how would you say, like, if an adolescent, why can't I say that word, an adolescent comes up to you and asks you how they can kind of see if they're actually doing negative self-talk, like how what kind of tip would you give them to kind of identify if their daily, internal monologue is something that should be molded in a more positive way?
Absolutely, that's actually a very great question. I would say you have to really do an introspective of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to your thoughts. If you need to write them down, write them down.
Mm-hmm.
And a very effective thing I have done is that if thoughts come up to me, I try to think of if I would say those same thoughts to a friend. And very often, if you wouldn't say those to a friend, those aren't constructive thoughts to yourself. They're not something that will push you forward. And they're something that ultimately you find negative to say to someone else. So it will show you that saying those to yourself ultimately is your negative self-talk. It is not positive. So I think having that introspective, listening to yourself, taking that time to just pause in your day and just do a little checkup of what am I thinking? How is it making me feel about myself, about where I am? I think those are very valuable things to do in our daily lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, no, that's a true quote you just said there. Like, it really is important to kind of befriend yourself almost when you're definitely um, performing, not performing, doing self-talk.
Mhm.
Finally, I mean, this final question, by the way, all the viewers, if you have any questions or if you agree with with what Isabella says, please drop them, down in the comments below. So the final question is, what would you like our viewers to take from this interview?
I would have a few top tips for viewers who might um, be going through negative self-talk. And I think one is what I mentioned, questioning your thoughts and thinking of if you would say those to a friend or not, listening in to your thoughts. The second one would be to write things down, a list of things that are positive about yourself or about your direct environment, and really make sure that you are coming back to that list whenever you're having the negative talks. And then the third one is really cliche, but surrounding yourself with the good people. the energy they will give off to you will impact the way you think on a daily perspective. So really make sure to have good people around you. And of course, if you ever need to seek help from friends, family, or even professionals, don't be embarrassed to do so, and don't be ashamed to do so. It is always, always welcome.
Isabella, like what you said at the end, how like, you know, just doing this interview like this and you talking up about your journey is so important to destigmatize mental health and destigmatize seeking for help from people. And I think it's something that we still struggle from, although it seems like if you look at, you know, like Gen Z people's feeds, you'd often see like how people like, oh, I'm so depressed, I've got anxiety and all this, and yet there's still a stigma around, you know, especially seeking help from professionals. So
Absolutely.
I'm so thankful that you've discussed about your experience, and also what you said at the end reminded me of what Mariana, like a body positive plus size model who we've had on our platform, said. She gave the viewers a tip about how if you feel like your feed, or like just because you said how, you know, surround positive people, you know, around you, and make sure that, you know, you're surrounded by positive energy. Like she also said how it also applies to your social media feed, just because so many of us are affected by it today. So how you should, you know, perhaps if you think like a certain profile's, you know, ruining your, you know, mental health, like, and you can't constantly remind yourself that, you know, a major part of the photos are like photoshopped and all that. If you like know you're struggling from that, she gave us a tip on how, you know, we shouldn't hesitate to unfollow them and like, you know, take time off them. And
Absolutely.
yeah, like replacing
And
by yeah, go ahead.
no, I mean, I was just gonna say that goes with, I mean, I know this is a very hard thing to do. To even in your direct circles, I mean, your friends, there can be a very big pressure of saying no, and saying, I don't want to hang out with this particular friend because they are negative and they are impacting me. And I know it can be very hard to just take a step back from those people. But I think it's hugely important to address that the amount of hurt it will do to one's health, one's mental health, is enormous. And if you can take that little step and have that strength to get away from those people, it will help you a lot on the long run.
No, that's very, very true. And like something that I've personally started doing was like, you know, follow like even hashtags like hashtag, you know, self-love, body positivity. Like although luckily I haven't been like, you know, I've never been at a like a pit bottom of, you know, negative thoughts. I think it's just important to remind yourself that, you know, you have to watch out on how you know, speak to yourself. So
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you so much, Isabella, for reminding us such important, you know, aspects of life. And
no problem. Thank you.
And I'm so sure that the viewers agree. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
See you around, Isabella. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.